Their mega hit was Shout to the Lord. Just one more time for the Lord.
Shout it. Shout it.
Shout it to the Lord. I know you didn't shout it enough the last few times I heard it. Wasn't
You know you make me want to shout, throw my hands up.
It kind of has that sort of vibe to it, though, isn't that I mean, that is the...
Well, they do want you to throw your hands up for sure.
Yes, yeah.
They always want you to be doing this thing. So,
a lot of today that might be considered cultural appropriation. You're appropriating the secular culture, and you know what? They're not happy about it.
Right.
Man, yeah. So the Hillsong's mega hits like "Shout to the Lord" were a mainstay, as the article says, on Christian radio in charismatic and evangelical churches throughout the 90s and early 2000s. And one of the things that comes out of that is, an interest in the movement, denomination, personalities of Hillsong. And so people began to collectively gather themselves around that and those types of people. And of course, one of those being Carl Lentz, and he's a good case study for what we could call emotive preaching, where you already referenced this, David, where you are looking at preaching and the church environment as something that is based in kind of an emotional response, an emotional dialogue, if you will, one emotional statement to you and you responding in emotional kind. And one of the things that I think it's good to say right off the bat is that it's not as if Lutherans are anti-emotion, or like some sort of robotics type of people. We just don't have emotion as what is normative for us for faithful confession of Christ, because His Word, God's Word, the Scriptures, are what is normative for us in preaching and teaching. And I'm sure that they would take some issue with that, because they would say that they use God's Word, but it is a distortion of God's Word to try to appeal to people's emotions and feelings, and to make them feel about something in a different way, even if it's something that we might agree with. And Hillsong has taken some more quote unquote conservative or biblical stances on things, but the way that they go about it is when it's not grounded in a scriptural or a what we might call catechetical instruction, where you are actually teaching and developing that sort of understanding of God's Word through people who are wrestling with the Scriptures and coming to conclusions, and you're using I keep repeating this word. I can't think of a simile here, or a synonym here for emotion, but it just becomes a great manipulation of the mind, and what ultimately happens within celebrity and celebrity culture. Well, they're known for fads and trends that don't last, and that's basically what can happen in a Hillsong type of environment, where you can feel emotionally pulled in 1 second toward one particular topic, whatever it is. I don't want to start the polemic here, but about a particular issue. But you can imagine just have a hot button topic in your head. You feel emotionally pulled towards one side of that quote unquote debate or issue, and then you talk to someone else who's on just equally passionate about the same topic on the other side of that quote unquote hot button topic or issue, and now you're pulled over here. And so who are you? That's a part of the problem. We walk by faith and not by sight. And this is what emotive preaching and teaching does. It gathers the attention of our eyes and draws us towards those things which are the shiny object of people's approval. And that's what ultimately happens within these sort of emotion-based preaching and teaching.
Right.
David, what do you
think? Honestly, too, if people would even go to a different church other than their own, even within their own synod or conference or whatever you want to say, like you will very, very quickly realize that not every preacher preaches the same.
Yeah.
So like and it's not to say that their preaching is bad or good. The question is, are they basing their preaching on God's word? So, and I mean, I don't consider myself a great preacher by any stretch of the imagination, but people say that I'm expressive. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, that's great, but like, I don't want to just be expressive. I want to be true. I want to speak what is actually God's word. And, so, to a certain extent, when you look at one of these churches and you go, well, do they have the substance that I need? Or do they just have the energy that I'm looking for in a preacher?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Because ultimately, when you look to the wrong thing, you're going to get yourself in trouble. And I'm reminded of the Good Shepherd, right? The Good Shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep. Mm-hmm. But in the same context of that, Jesus talks about how the false preachers will come as wolves in sheep's clothing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so you got this idea that like, okay, well, a sheep looks like a sheep, and we all know a sheep says "ba," but if you're a wolf wearing a sheep's clothing, you can only sound like a dog because you're still a dog. Mm-hmm. And so everything might look like, hey, that's a faithful guy. Maybe people are attracted to whatever message he has.
I'm just like you,
right? Yeah. But in the end, when you actually start to analyze what they're actually saying, and you go, well, is this actually based on God's word, or is this just like cultural norms being reperpetuated forward? Mm-hmm. So I don't want to say that like having passionate preaching or something is evil through and through, but if passionate preaching or the emotion that goes along with that is the only thing that is carrying that through, your church is built on the sand.
Yep. Mm-hmm.